Ma'am. The hotel manager set both hands flat on the marble desk, and somehow that single gesture managed to be both professional and a dismissal at once. I want to be direct with you. This is the Whitmore Grand. Camille looked at him. I know it is. Our standard rooms begin at $800 a night. I know that too. She held out the printed confirmation. Suite 1204, Camille Reeves. Randolph did not take the paper. He looked at it briefly. The way you look at something you've already decided doesn't apply to you. I'm afraid there's been some kind of mix-up. There hasn't been a mix-up. Be that as it may. He smiled the smile of a man long practiced in making people feel unreasonable without raising his voice. We have a property 2 blocks east, the Marquette. That's excellent for. I'm not going to the Marquette. Camille's voice was quiet, perfectly level. I'd like you to pull up my reservation. She didn't tell him who she was. She'd given him every chance to find out on his own. In 90 minutes, that choice would end his career. But she didn't know that yet. What she knew, in the particular way you know things you've spent a lifetime learning not to show, was exactly what was happening and exactly why. She breathed in through her nose. She set her overnight bag down on the tile. She waited. 90 minutes earlier, Camille Reeves had driven herself to the Whitmore Grand in a 4-year-old Volvo with a university parking permit still hanging from the rearview mirror. Not a car service, not a driver, not the town car her assistant Dara had tried to book 3 separate times that week. Her own car, her mother's birthday, her one rule about this particular day. The valet, a young man named Toby who couldn't have been more than 20, came out at a near jog and opened her door before she'd fully stopped. Welcome to the Whitmore Grand. He took her key with the automatic ease of someone who'd done this 10,000 times. How was the drive? Long, Camille said and meant it. She'd come from a 7 a.m. board meeting in Dallas, 3 hours of highway, a fast food coffee, and her audiobook on repeat because she'd been too tired to take in new words. Long shift for you too? He blinked. People were rarely curious about that. Yes, ma'am, started at 6. Almost done? 2 more hours. Almost is the hardest part. She left a folded 20 with him. Hang in there, Toby. She carried her own bag inside. She always did. The lobby of the Whitmore Grand was the kind of space designed to make you feel small if you weren't sure you belonged. 20-foot ceilings, Italian marble the color of cream, a floral arrangement at the center that probably cost more than some people's monthly rent. Camille had walked into this lobby for the first time 11 years ago, at the closing of an acquisition that had taken 3 years and more sleepless nights than she could count. She'd stood in almost this exact spot, in a better suit than today's, and tried to hold her face still. She'd thought about her mother. Her mother, who had kept a torn-out magazine photo of this hotel on the refrigerator for the last 12 years of her life. Someday, she'd say, every time she caught Camille looking at it, when things ease up a little, things hadn't eased up. They'd gotten harder instead, the way they do, and then her mother was gone, and the someday went with her. Camille had bought the Whitmore brand 8 months after the funeral. She came back every year on her mother's birthday, alone, no entourage, booked under her own name, same as anyone. She wanted to see what her mother would have seen, a regular guest, a woman who'd saved up for this. If the staff treated Camille Reeves well, it meant they treated everyone well. That was the whole point. Near the elevator bank, a housekeeper was struggling with an overloaded cart, one wheel catching on a tile groove with every push. Camille crossed over without thinking and held the cart steady while the woman righted it. Thank you, the woman said, surprised. Sure, Camille gave her a small nod. You're good. She wasn't looking for credit. She never announced herself. She walked on toward the front desk, overnight bag over one shoulder, and the small worn leather journal tucked into the side pocket of her bag the way it always was. Her mother had pressed it into her hands the morning of her first bank meeting, 23 years ago. The cover was cracked at one corner now, the pages full in the front and blank in the back, and inside the front cover her mother's handwriting, a little unsteady from the arthritis even then, read, "You'll go places, baby girl. Write everyone down." She had written everyone down. She set the journal on the counter beside her bag while she reached for the confirmation printout. A habit, keeping it close. keeping it where she could feel the weight of it. She hadn't thought anything of it. Not yet. Kyle, the front desk associate, was 26 and new enough to the job that he still checked his own reflection in the lobby windows between guests. When Camille approached, he registered her the way you register passing weather, briefly, then moved on. Jeans, a plain gray cardigan, natural hair, a tote bag. His expression settled into the particular shape of someone deciding something. "Can I help you find something, ma'am?" Checking in, she placed the confirmation on the counter. "Reeves, Suite 1204. He typed, then stopped. "I'm not seeing anything under that name." "Try the confirmation number. It's at the bottom." He typed again, slower, the way you type when you've already made up your mind and are just going through the motions. "I'm still not finding a reservation here. I booked it 3 weeks ago. It's there." "Ma'am." He lowered his voice like he was doing her a kindness. "This suite runs $1,200 on weekends. I just want to make sure there isn't some confusion about." "I know what it runs." Camille's tone didn't change. "I'd like to check in." That was when Kyle reached for his radio. Randolph Briggs had managed the Whitmore Grand's flagship Chicago property for 9 years. He had a particular walk, unhurried, shoulders back, the walk of a man who believed his presence resolved problems simply by arriving. He came through the side door behind the desk and took in the scene in one practiced sweep. Kyle looking uncertain, a woman in a cardigan who should not, in his estimation, have been at this counter, and a printed confirmation he hadn't yet decided was legitimate. He introduced himself and asked how he could help. It came out sounding nothing like a question. Camille handed him the confirmation. He held it without reading it. "I'll need a second form of ID," he said. She handed over her driver's license. He studied it with the slow deliberateness of a man performing authority. He looked from the photo to her face and back. He did not hand it back. "Mrs. Reeves." He said the name carefully, like it was a placeholder. "And where are you visiting from?" "Dallas." She kept her voice even. "The reservation is in your hand." "Method of payment?" She handed him her card. He held it at an angle, tilting it under the desk light. "The thing is," he said almost gently, "anyone can present a printed confirmation. We take security very seriously here, for the benefit of all our guests. I am one of your guests." "Of course." He handed the card back, but not the license. "If you wouldn't mind, we do have a verification process." "You haven't verified anything." Camille looked at the license still in his hand. "That's mine." "One moment, please." He turned, license still in his possession, and walked toward the back office. Through the glass, she watched him pick up a phone. 2 minutes later, a security officer came through the lobby door. His name tag read Rex. He was broad across the shoulders and positioned himself between Camille and the exit with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this before. "Ma'am." Not a greeting, just a signal that things were moving now and she should understand that. Camille looked at him. She looked at Randolph, who had returned to the desk with his hands folded and her license nowhere visible. She looked at Kyle, who had found something urgent to examine on his keyboard. Around them, the lobby moved. A couple in resort wear crossed toward the elevator without breaking stride. A man in a blazer answered his phone near the bar. Nobody looked over for more than a second. Nobody was asking anyone else for a second form of ID. Camille noticed. She had spent 47 years noticing. "You're going to tell me I need to leave," she said. Randolph tilted his head with practiced patience. "We can certainly make other arrangements. I have a confirmed reservation. Mrs. Reeves." He lowered his voice again, that performed kindness like a coat he put on when he needed it. "I think it would be simpler for everyone if we resolve this quietly. I'm not the one making things complicated." From a velvet chair near the window, a woman in a cream blazer, the kind of woman who had opinions about other people's shoes, looked over with a small, satisfied expression and murmured something to the man beside her. Just loud enough to carry. Some people just don't understand where they are. Heat moved through Camille's chest. Not rage, something older than that. The specific weathered weight of being made into a problem in a room where you have every right to stand. She breathed through it. She stayed. The way she'd taught herself to stay still in rooms like this her entire life. Rex stepped closer. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to gather your things." She reached for her overnight bag. Her hand brushed the journal. In the same moment, Rex moved to take the bag, and the journal slid off the marble counter and landed face up on the lobby floor. Rex stepped forward. His foot came down on the cover. The crack was small, just the old leather giving at a corner seam that had held for 23 years. But Camille heard it. She looked down at her mother's handwriting face up on the marble. The cover split where it had only been worn before, and something in her chest went very quiet, a different kind of quiet than composure. She crouched and picked it up herself, slowly. She closed it carefully, the way you close something that can't quite be unclosed. Rex was already holding her bag. Randolph had his arms folded, watching the situation wrap itself up. Kyle had moved on to the next task in his queue. "I'd like my license back," Camille said. Randolph produced it from his jacket pocket. Of course it had been in his pocket the whole time. He held it out, and she took it, and she took her bag, and she let them walk her to the door. Outside, the afternoon light was flat and gray. She sat down on the low concrete ledge near the valet stand. Toby saw her from across the drive and started toward her, and she gave him a small shake of her head. She was all right. She took out her phone and pressed a number she knew by heart. "Dara." Her voice was calm, the kind of calm that takes a long time to learn. "I'm on the sidewalk outside the Whitmore Grand, Chicago. They've asked me to leave." A pause. "Then don't move. Don't say a word to them. I'm 6 blocks away." She hung up. Through the glass, she could see Randolph speaking with the couple in resort wear, laughing at something, easy and unhurried. Rex stood near the door. Kyle was already helping the next person in line. Camille opened the journal to her mother's handwriting and read it once, quietly to herself. "You'll go places, baby girl. Write everyone down." She held it closed in her lap and waited. Dara Whitfield moved fast. She was 38, had been Camille's chief operating officer for 6 years, and she had a particular expression she wore when something had gone seriously wrong, and she was about to make it exactly right. She pushed through the lobby doors with 2 members of the corporate property team behind her, badge visible, phone already in use. She went straight through the front doors to Camille. When she saw her sitting on the ledge with the cracked journal in her lap, Dara said something quiet and not appropriate for polite company, which Camille would later describe simply as heartfelt. "Are you hurt?" "No." "We're going back in." Camille stood. She tucked the journal into her bag. She walked back through the doors she had been walked out of 11 minutes ago, and this time the sound of her footsteps on the marble felt entirely different. Randolph was still at the desk. When he saw Dara, his face rearranged itself into professional neutral. He extended a hand. Dara didn't take it. "Do you know who this woman is?" Her voice carried to every corner of the lobby without her needing to raise it. Randolph glanced at Camille, then back. "I'm afraid we had a situation with a guest who—" "Her name is Camille Reeves." Dara let the name land in the room and stay there. "Founding CEO and chairwoman of Whitmore Hospitality Group. She owns this hotel. She owns every property in this chain. She signs your contract. She signs mine." The lobby didn't go quiet all at once. It went quiet the way a room goes quiet when something tilts, gradually and then completely. Kyle's hands stopped moving on the keyboard. The woman in the cream blazer set down her glass. Rex, still near the door, looked at the floor. Randolph's mouth opened. He looked at Camille, really looked at her, the way he had refused to look at her for the entire previous hour, and the certainty left his face in slow stages, like water finding its level. "Mr. Briggs." Camille's voice was entirely even. She didn't raise it. She never had. "You had my ID in your pocket. You had a confirmed reservation. You had a card in my name. You walked me through your lobby and out the door anyway." She waited 1 beat. "Tell me which of those things is the part you'd like to explain." His mouth closed. His hands went to his sides. "Mrs. Reeves, I had no way of knowing who you—" "That's the whole point." She held his gaze without any particular anger in it, just clarity. "You should treat someone with dignity when you don't know who they are. That's not a social standard. That's just the job." He had nothing. 22 years of practiced authority had no answer for that sentence. She watched him understand it, and then watched him understand that it was already too late. She turned to Dara. "Pull the complaint file for this property," she said. "Last 3 years, everything marked unresolved or closed without action." Dara nodded and stepped aside, already on her phone. Rex unclipped his badge and held it out before anyone asked him to. The truth in the file was worse than one bad afternoon. 7 prior complaints at this property over 3 years, all from guests of color, all marked insufficient evidence or resolved internally, 6 of them with Randolph's initials on the closure form. The 7th had Kyle's. Camille read through all of them standing at the front desk, in the lobby that had asked her to leave, and she didn't speak for a long time when she finished. "One man can decide to be cruel," she said finally to Dara. "It takes a system to let him do it 7 times. She looked toward the elevator bank. The housekeeper with the difficult cart was still working the far end of the hall. "What's her name?" Dara checked. "Sophia Brennan, 7 years with the company. I want 20 minutes with her before I go up." Randolph and Rex were gone from the building within the hour. Kyle submitted his resignation before he was asked to leave. The complaint file went to Whitmore's legal team and then to an outside civil rights firm, and within 3 weeks an attorney named Francis had reviewed all 7 cases and made contact with 5 of the original complainants. 4 agreed to speak further. The case that followed wasn't quick and wasn't simple. Camille made no public statement for the first 90 days. When she finally spoke, it was to her full executive team, no cameras, no press release, and what she said was not primarily about Randolph. She said, "I built this company from a single extended stay property in Columbus when I was 29 years old. Whatever grew inside it that allowed 7 complaints to be buried grew on my watch. I don't get to be surprised by that. I only get to fix it." The room was very quiet. Then someone began to applaud, and it spread the way relief spreads when something true finally gets said out loud. The legal outcome took 8 months. Randolph's attorney argued his client had been following training and standard protocol. The outside firm's investigation found the training contained no explicit standards for when to escalate a guest dispute to security, which meant unexamined discretion had filled the gap. And unexamined discretion tends to look exactly like the person using it. The judge was not sympathetic. Whitmore Hospitality Group announced its Dignity Standards Initiative 90 days after the lobby incident. Mandatory de-escalation and bias training at every property. An independent complaint board with no reporting line to local management. A guest rights statement posted in plain language at every front desk in the chain. Sophia Brennan was brought in to help design the training curriculum, and she taught every cohort the same line. If you wouldn't ask that question to the guest in the penthouse suite, you don't ask it to the guest standing in front of you. The cracked journal sits in Camille's office now, in a small frame next to a photograph of her mother. She had the leather repaired, but she kept the crack visible. You can still see exactly where it broke. She flies to Chicago every year on her mother's birthday. She still books the suite under her own name. She still carries the journal. This past March, she walked into the Whitmore Grand lobby alone, in jeans and a gray cardigan, overnight bag over her shoulder. The young woman at the front desk smiled before Camille had reached the counter. "Mrs. Reeves," she said warmly, "welcome back. Your suite is ready." Camille smiled back. She kept her bag on her own shoulder. She went upstairs, opened the window to the city her mother had always meant to visit, and she sat for a while in the quiet afternoon light. And she wrote. "The story you just heard is fiction. Camille Reeves isn't real. But the walked out, the ID held in a pocket, the proof dismissed because it didn't fit the story already written. Those aren't invented. They're drawn from documented accounts, from people who didn't have a phone number to call, who sat on that same sidewalk with no one coming across the street to say their name. Most of those stories didn't reach a courtroom. Most of them just got lived through and carried home, quietly, the way people carry things when there's no other option. So here's the real question, and we genuinely want your honest answer in the comments. If you had been standing in that lobby, if you saw all of it, would you have said something, or would you have stayed quiet? Think about it for a moment. Then ask yourself what you'll do the next time it isn't a story on your screen. If this one stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to see it. Hit like so it can travel further. And subscribe to Velvet Verdict, because the next person they try this on might not own the hotel, but they'll still deserve every bit of the dignity Camille had to fight for.